The man just wanted a place to sleep. But the moment that old wooden door creaked open, he knew he'd knocked on the wrong door. A door that swallows men whole and spits out nothing but silence. Rain whipped across his face like a bullwhip. Wind howled through the canyon like a dying animal. Royce Barrett, sunburnt cheeks, eyes cold as forged steel, pulled his reins before a lonely house leaning against the hill. The sign dangled loose above the porch, Magnolia's Rest. The paint was fading like the souls who had entered and never left. His horse snorted and shook. Royce glanced at the window. There was light, movement, people. But something didn't feel right. It was colder than the rain, that feeling. And Royce knew that feeling well. He'd survived nights darker than this, where trust always came at the price of blood. Each step toward the porch was a dare. He didn't know it yet, but this night, this cursed, rain-drenched night, would change his life forever. Not because of a dry bed or a hot meal, but because of the lies simmering in the stew, the secrets waiting behind the second-floor door, and a girl with eyes that spoke the truth, though no one had ever let her speak. The rain had claws that night. It didn't fall, it attacked, came sideways, slicing through the dark like razors off a devil's whip. Trees bent, dirt turned to black soup, and down the middle of that howling misery rode a man too tired to curse and too proud to beg. Royce Barrett. Dust on his boots had turned to mud. His coat, once the color of strong coffee, now dripped like a dying animal's hide. For 3 days he'd chased ghosts through mountain passes and outlaw trails. Now, with night settling in and his horse trembling beneath him, he had one goal left: don't die in the cold. Ahead, like a bad memory refusing to fade, stood a boarding house with one flickering light. A crooked sign swung on rusted chains, Magnolia's Rest. The kind of place that shouldn't still be standing, or maybe shouldn't be found. He didn't like it. The kind of not liking that curled low in his gut and stayed quiet. The kind he'd learned to listen to back when trusting folks got you holes in your chest. But Royce had slept in swamps, in dry creek beds, under dead men's roofs. One more night couldn't kill him. Could it? His horse grunted, nostrils flaring. Royce patted the beast's neck with a shaky hand. "Just one night, boy," he murmured. "Then we move on." He dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the slop. His legs ached. His ribs itched where the old bullet wound throbbed under soaked cloth. He felt every mile he'd ridden and every mistake he'd made along the way. But the worst pain wasn't in his body. It was in the silence behind his eyes. A silence named Caleb, his younger brother, the one Royce couldn't save. That silence screamed every time he closed his eyes. He climbed the steps to the porch. The light behind the window wavered like it was afraid of him. He raised a hand to knock, but the door creaked open before he could touch it. She stood there, 40-something, hair pinned back, smile too wide for the storm. "Well now," she said, "aren't you a sight for sore eyes?" Royce didn't answer right away. The woman looked like warmth, but smelled like smoke you can't see, and the air behind her still. "I'm just looking for shelter," he said. Her smile never moved. "Then you've come to the right place." He stepped inside. The warmth wrapped around him. But it wasn't kindness, it was bait, and Royce Barrett had just walked into a trap dressed up like mercy. The floor creaked like old bones. Inside it was warm, too warm. The fire in the hearth burned steady, but the air felt thick, like breath held too long. Royce stepped over the threshold, dripping rain boots, tapping against wood polished by stories no one lived to tell. The woman closed the door behind him. Click. The sound was small, final. "I'm Maggie," she said, brushing wet strands from his coat like she had the right. By the fire, a young woman looked up. She couldn't have been more than 20. Blonde, fragile as blown glass, hands moving fast over a needle and thread that trembled more than stitched. Her eyes found Royce's startled blue like a deer that knows it's being watched. "Evening," he muttered. She nodded, but her eyes flicked just for a second toward a closed door at the far end of the hall. Royce noticed a lot of things, like the table set for one, the coat rack with no other hats, the silence. It didn't feel like two women in a house, it felt like a performance, like everyone here was playing a part and he was the only fool who hadn't seen the script. "You're lucky," Maggie said sweetly. "Storm like this, folks disappear. Roads wash out. No one even knows you're here." That wasn't comfort. That was a warning dressed like kindness. "I'll pay for a room," Royce said. Maggie waved him off. "Your coin's no good here tonight, Mr. Barrett." "Mr. Barrett," she echoed, savoring it like warm whiskey. "Let's get you out of those wet clothes. I'll fetch you some stew. Birdie be a dear." Birdie flinched, dropped her needle. Blood welled at her fingertip. She pressed it to her lips, fast eyes wide. "Careful," Maggie snapped, and the fire snapped with her. "Can't have you staining Mrs. Henderson's linens again." Royce's fingers twitched near his belt. Reflex. Muscle memory. Every inch of him wanted to rest, but his gut was screaming. The stew smelled of beef, carrots, thyme, and something else. Something bitter, familiar. He didn't sit. Not yet. He glanced toward the stairs. Maggie followed his eyes. "Second room on the right. Fresh sheets. You'll sleep like the dead." Birdie dropped the needle again. Royce didn't smile. Didn't speak. Just looked around the house like it might bite. Because it would. He wasn't sure when it would happen, midnight maybe, or when the storm masked the screams, but he knew. This place was waiting for the wrong kind of sleep. The stew hit the table with a dull thud. Steam curled upward like smoke from a spent pistol. Chipped bowl, heavy spoon. Royce stared down at the meal like it might stare back. "Eat while it's hot," Maggie chirped, pouring coffee that smelled more like burnt nails than beans. "Birdie's stitching up a fresh towel for your room. She's such a help." Birdie didn't speak. She sat silent in her chair by the fire, threads slipping from her fingers like secrets she couldn't hold. Her hands trembled more now. The blood from her earlier prick still stained her thumb. She hadn't cleaned it. Royce took a slow bite. Salt. Too much. Far too much. The kind that made your tongue curl and your head feel slow. Not by accident. His jaw tightened, but he chewed. Swallowed. "You said folks disappear?" he said casually, watching Maggie's face over the rim of his cup. "That true?" "Oh, just old wives' tales." She smiled too fast. "You know how country folk talk?" Birdie dropped her needle again. It clattered to the floor. She didn't pick it up this time. Royce's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she held the look. There was something in them, something more than fear. A message, a warning, a plea. "Don't eat that stew." He pushed the bowl away. "Storm's worse than I thought," he said, standing. "Might check my horse before it kicks the boards loose." Maggie moved to block him. Too quick, too smooth. "No need. He'll be fine till morning." Her eyes held his, wide, flat, like coins left too long in blood. "Best let the weather pass," she added. "You'll rest easier on a full belly." Rest. Royce forced a nod, but inside alarm screamed. His limbs were heavier than they should be. The salt wasn't just salt. The coffee wasn't just bitter. He turned toward the stairs. One step. Then another. Slow, deliberate. Behind him, Birdie spoke. Just one word. A whisper. Barely breath. "Don't." It stopped him cold. He looked back. She stared at the closed door down the hall, then at him, then back again. Maggie froze. Her smile dropped for the first time. Royce knew that wasn't a room. It was a secret, and tonight it was about to be opened. The stairs groaned like they remembered screams. Each step Royce climbed felt heavier than the last. Not just from the trail or the rain or the weight of his saddlebags. No, this was different. His boots sank into the wood like it didn't want to let go. The second door on the right stood open, waiting. Inside, the room looked perfect. Too perfect. Bed tucked tight, basin clean, floor swept, like no one had ever touched it, and like someone touched it every day. Royce stepped in, set his bags down, sat slow. His head swam, his fingers tingled. The salt. He closed his eyes for a second and saw nothing but black and red. Flashes, faces, a knife, a scream. No. He forced himself up, knees weak, palms slick. He dropped beside the bed and reached under it. Blind hands in shadow. Clink. His fingers found metal. A knife. Not just any knife. Bone-handled. Ornate. A hawk carved into the grip. He knew that blade. Morrison's. Royce's jaw clenched. Morrison cattle buyer from Silver Creek. Disappeared 3 weeks back with a pouch of gold and a list of safe houses. This was one of them. He reached deeper. More things. A silver pocket watch. Fine gloves. A coin purse half full. Trophies. Memories of the dead. A sound drifted up through the floorboards' voices. Male. Low. Coming from the porch. Big fella, one said. Gonna take 2 of us this time. Then Maggie's voice. Sharp. All business. 200 in his bags. Maybe more on him. Make it clean. Royce staggered back. His gun. Where there? He fumbled it from the holster, arms shaking. His vision blurred, but instinct took over. The doorknob turned. No time left. He moved behind the door, heart pounding like war drums. The handle creaked open. A big man stepped in. Rope in one hand, lantern in the other. Royce didn't hesitate. Crack. The butt of the Colt slammed down. The man crumpled. Lantern hit the floor. Oil splashed. Flames. Fire leapt like a wild thing loosed from hell. Get him! Someone shouted from below. Royce looked around. No way back. Only forward, only out. Smoke curled. Heat rose. Then Birdie's voice. Screaming. Not from fear. From pain. Please, I never wanted this. They have my sister. Royce froze. Everything shifted. This wasn't just murder for hire. This was slavery. Coercion. Chains dressed as aprons and lace. And Birdie was caught in the middle. The fire breathed louder than the men. Smoke curled under the door like fingers reaching for flesh. Flames danced wild across the bedsheets, orange tongues licking up the walls. The room was no longer a room. It was a furnace with memories. Royce wiped sweat from his brow, hands trembling. The drugs still fought inside him, thick in his blood. But something stronger stirred beneath it. Rage, not for himself, for her. Birdie's scream still rang in his skull. Not a lie, not an act. A cry for someone else. Someone innocent. He stumbled to the window, unlatched it with numb fingers. Rain slapped his face. Cold, brutal, clean. Below mud, a dozen feet down. He could see shapes moving in the storm. Lanterns, guns, wolves circling. And there by the side shed, Maggie, dragging Birdie through the mud like a sack of wheat. The girl kicked, fought. Maggie slapped her hard enough to drop her to her knees. You want to die with this place? Maggie shrieked. Royce's jaw tightened. He threw a leg through the window. Roof groaned beneath his boots. 3 seconds later, it gave. Shingles split. Wood cracked. He fell, hard. Shoulder first. Mud rose to meet him like wet fists. The world spun. But pain meant he was still awake. He rolled behind a barrel, coughing, gasping, gun still in hand. Shots cracked the night, close, too close. He fired back, blind. One man dropped another, retreated into the smoke. The boarding house burned behind him, now glowing like a lantern of death. He saw them again. Maggie, Birdie, the horses. She was still fighting, still trying, still worth saving. Royce moved, slow. Deliberate, like a bear bleeding but not broken. He slipped through the smoke boots, silent in the mud. Another man appeared, rifle up. Royce didn't flinch. He fired. The man fell without a sound. Rain hissed on the flames, but nothing could put this night out now. As he crept toward the back, Royce saw something that froze his blood. More horses than men. They weren't alone. More were coming. Or were already here. This wasn't just a murder den. It was a network. And Birdie, she wasn't just bait. She was the key. Rain can drown a fire, but not this fire. Not the kind born from betrayal and blood. Royce moved like a ghost made of grit, smoke behind him. Gun warm in his hand. eyes locked on the girl who wouldn't stop fighting. Birdie. She'd torn free, once mud on her dress, blood on her cheek. Maggie yanked her back cruel and practiced. The older woman hissed curses like a snake with a preacher's tongue. Royce raised his Colt. Maggie, she spun. Eyes wide, face twisted with something worse than fear recognition. You, she spat. You should be dead. I'm not, Royce said coldly. But you're about to be. She grabbed Birdie by the throat, pressing iron against her temple. You shoot, she dies. Royce didn't lower his aim. You kill her, you lose your only shield. That buys me 5 seconds. Plenty. Silence. Then Birdie moved. She bit Maggie's arm. Hard. Maggie screamed. The gun wavered. Royce fired. One shot. Shoulder. Maggie spun, dropped the weapon, fell into the mud with a howl of rage. Birdie stumbled back, gasping free. Down Royce barked. She dropped as another man emerged from the shadows, rifle raised. Royce turned too slow. Crack. But the bullet didn't come from his gun. The man dropped. Birdie stood, arm extended, smoke rising from the small revolver in her hand. Her face calm now, eyes sharp, no more trembling. Then she reached inside her dress, pulled out something small, heavy, cold, a badge. United States Deputy Marshal. My name's Ruth Caldwell, she said. Voice steady. Undercover, 2 months. I was waiting for backup. Royce stared, breath caught somewhere between relief and fury. You could have said something, he growled. She holstered the revolver. And blow the whole damn thing. She nodded at the burning house. We needed proof. This is the proof. The fire behind them lit the sky like Judgment Day. Smoke curled into the clouds. Somewhere inside, the last screams of Magnolia's rest were dying. They stood side by side. 2 marshals. Covered in rain-ash blood and truth. Maggie groaned on the ground, wounded, cursing, but alive. She'll talk, Ruth said. She'll have to. Royce nodded. His heart still hammered. But something inside him was still. The silence was gone. Not the quiet of death. The calm of justice. The storm eased. The fire did not. Behind them, Magnolia's rest collapsed in a scream of timber and flame. Sparks leapt into the sky like the souls it had swallowed, burning, crying, gone. Ruth stood in the smoke chest, rising hard, soaked in rain and truth. She looked smaller now, not weaker, just real. No more act. No more trembling girl with thread and silent glances. Royce turned to her. How long? 60 days. Her voice cracked, but she didn't flinch. I watched men walk in and never walk out. Couldn't stop it. Not yet. I needed names. Ledgers. Patterns. She looked away. I needed them to trust me. And Maggie, she trusted one, Ruth said. But she liked power and cruelty. Her jaw tightened. I played obedient. She gave me just enough leash to breathe, not enough to scream. Rain rolled down her face. Maybe tears, maybe not. Royce watched the flicker in her eyes like candlelight behind a cracked window. That same thing he carried inside. The fire you keep lit when the world wants it drowned. You were willing to die for it, he said quietly. She met his eyes. So were you. They didn't smile. There wasn't time for that. Gunshots had stopped. The smoke had thinned. But the silence left behind wasn't peace. It was the breath before the reckoning. Maggie moaned nearby, bleeding in the mud, muttering names and curses. Royce looked at her, then at the ruins. How many? He asked. Ruth's lips parted. At least 17. That we know of. Men, women, one girl barely 12. The numbers punched like bullets. Royce knelt beside Maggie, grabbed her by the collar, pulled her face close. You're going to answer for every last one. She spat blood. You think this ends here? No, he said. But you do. He dropped her, let her cough and choke on the weight of what she'd built and lost. Behind them, the last beam of the boarding house groaned and fell. A final crack of thunder split the night. And just like that, Magnolia's rest was no more. Only ash remained. But in that ash stood two souls, scorched, not broken. They'd walked through fire and pulled the truth out with them. Ruth turned. "We'll need to ride by dawn. I have evidence stashed in the barn. Names, routes. If we move fast, we can still catch the buyers before they scatter." Royce nodded. No more resting. No more running. Only the road ahead. The barn went up like a thunderclap. One moment Ruth was pulling open the latch, rain dripping from her cuffs. The next, boom, a flash of orange. A roar that shook the earth. Royce was thrown back hard. Mud and fire splitting the air. Ears ringing. Vision smeared with smoke and rain. He rolled coughed rose to one knee. The barn was gone. Splinters rained down like knives. The fire hadn't spread there. It had been waiting. A trap. He stumbled forward, shouting Ruth. No answer. His chest clamped tight. He knew the look of death, the silence it left. He'd seen it on battlefields, on his brother's face, on men who said, "Go on ahead, I'll hold 'em," and never did. He wouldn't feel it again. "Ruth," he bellowed. A cough, weak, then stronger. From behind a toppled beam, she crawled, face-bloodied coat ripped, one arm limp at her side. But her badge still hung at her belt, the evidence pouch clutched in her good hand. Royce ran, pulled her free, sat her against the trough. "You good?" She coughed again. "Can't hear much. Shoulders busted. But you're alive." She nodded. "So's this." She lifted the leather pouch, burned at the edge, but intact. Inside papers. Names. Routes. Signatures. A map. It wasn't just proof. It was everything. Royce looked past the burning wreckage. He saw the silhouettes of horses, riders moving away in the storm. Whoever set the charge was gone now, too far to chase, too smart to linger. "They knew," he said. "They knew we were coming." Ruth leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "Then they'll know we're not stopping." Royce stood. The sky was breaking open. Morning light crawled through the clouds like hope limping in after war. He turned to her. "How long to Copper Ridge? Half a day if we push hard." Royce reached for her hand, pulled her up slow. She winced, but didn't fall. Behind them the barn hissed and cracked. Ash curling into dawn. "You still in?" he asked. She didn't answer with words. She strapped her badge tighter. They loaded the evidence onto Royce's saddle. Maggie, bound and groaning, was slung behind. The others were dead. Gone in fire or by bullet. Justice didn't need more blood. It needed riders. As they set off, Royce glanced sideways. "You really never meant to cry out that night?" "When I climbed those stairs?" She smiled, just barely. "If I had, we wouldn't be here now." And that was truth. The kind buried in ash behind bullets and betrayal behind masks and stitched silence. Truth that lived. The trail was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that breathes just before a shot, that watches from trees, that waits. Royce rode ahead, eyes sweeping the horizon like a hawk born of gunpowder and regret. His coat, still damp with ash, flapped against his saddle. Maggie hung slumped behind him, arms tied, curses dry in her mouth. Ruth rode beside him, one arm bandaged tight, the other gripping her reins like they owed her blood. Her hat tilted low, her badge catching sunlight like a warning. They hadn't said much since the fire, but they didn't have to. Pain spoke its own language. So did survival. They rode past a burned tree. A child's shoe dangled from a broken branch. Ruth pulled up, stared. Royce followed her gaze. "She was 11, Ruth said. Name was Clara. They sold her to a freighter heading east. I couldn't stop it." Royce swallowed hard. "You will?" She looked at him, something like disbelief flickering in her face. "Why'd you really come to Magnolia's Rest?" she asked. "You weren't just chasing ghosts." He didn't answer at first. Just reached into his coat, pulled out a second badge. Faded, scratched, old. Ruth blinked. "Marshal." He nodded. "Retired. Long time ago. After my brother, I couldn't carry it." "Why now?" "Because somebody has to." They sat in the silence between two oaths. hers still fresh, still bleeding, his old but not dead. Then he reached over, pressed the old badge into her palm. "Keep it," he said. "A reminder. Not all ghosts are lost." Ruth looked at the medal, then at him. "What do we do next?" Royce turned his horse north. "To Copper Ridge. We hand over Maggie. Then we burn the rest of this rot to the ground." And after he didn't answer right away, after he finally said, "We ride." For who? For Clara. For Morrison. For every soul buried under fake names and forgotten graves. He looked at her, the storm behind them, the trail ahead. 2 badges, 1 vow. Ruth nodded. The sun rose slow, gold spilling across scorched earth. The fire behind them had ended a chapter. But the road ahead, it was just beginning. The land was quiet again, but it wasn't the same quiet. Not like before. Not like when Royce first rode out carrying nothing but dust and dead names. This quiet had weight. It remembered. The trail into Copper Ridge was long, cutting through red rock and morning mist. Royce and Ruth rode side by side, no words between them. None needed. The smell of rain still clung to their coats. Burned wood, gunpowder, smoke that would never fully wash out. Maggie sat tied in a prison wagon, slumped like a rotted throne. She hadn't spoken since the second night. Her eyes stayed fixed on the dirt. No more venom, no more power. Just a woman with nowhere left to run. At the ridge, the townsfolk watched in silence. Eyes narrowed, hands paused mid-task. They saw the badge on Royce's chest, dusty but shining. Saw the scars on Ruth's face. Saw the wagon. They didn't cheer. They didn't need to. Justice doesn't shout. It arrives. Royce dismounted slow, stretching tired limbs. He handed the reins to a stable boy and looked toward the marshal's office. Inside, new men would ask questions, write reports, stamp papers. He didn't plan to stay long. Ruth walked beside him, shoulders still stiff, but her spine straight as iron. "We ride again," she said. He looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "There's more out there. You know it." He did. He'd always known. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was chasing ghosts. He felt like he was chasing light. Back at the saloon, someone tipped their hat. A quiet thank you. A cup left on the porch for the road ahead. Small things, human things. Royce smiled. Just a flicker, but it was there. He turned to Ruth. "Ever wonder if we're just delaying the inevitable?" She shrugged. "Maybe. But maybe that's enough." They mounted up. No fanfare. No last words. Just 2 riders heading toward the edge of the known. Behind them, justice smoldered in the ashes. Ahead of them, more fires waited to be lit. They rode slow, purposeful. Wind at their backs, dust rising behind their heels, like memory. Because sometimes men don't come back from the fire, but sometimes they do. And when they do, they come back not as legends, not as ghosts, but as men again. Scarred, tired, but whole. The strong don't stay strong by staying silent. They stay strong by riding back in. Back into the dark. Back into the fight. Because someone has to. And if you Magnolia's rest that night, would you have eaten the stew? Climbed those stairs, fought through the fire? Or would you have ridden on, never knowing what lay behind that crooked sign? Tell us in the comments. When justice calls in the middle of a storm, would you answer?